In 2008, I could see where everything was going, and I knew that if I stayed at Avon, I wouldn't truly understand the new world.
She was born 2 months early, weighing less than a chicken. Her own words, you will see. As a single mum, she took a 30% pay cut just to be on the future. She is the writer of one of the 10 most read blogs in Argentina. But the fun fact is that all of that was done under a fake identity. She's the co-founder of Proteína, strategy director of Epopeya, and professor at University Lidela. And as you will see, a woman who can't sit still. She's a marketeer, a builder, a storyteller, and someone who has always known that you just don't have to pick just one thing. Join me and Anita Figueiredo in the Retrovisor. Hi, welcome Anita. I'm so excited to have you here. As a first question for you today, we will dive into, your now and what you're doing and the great leader that you are and businesswoman. But before we jump into the now, I want to jump backwards and I want to talk about Anita as an 8-year-old. Tell me about that person. What did you enjoy doing? What was it like?
I was early in every sense because I was born 2 months before my due date, only weighing 108 kilos. That's a line from my mother is that I weighted less than a chicken. And I feel that I was always in a hurry to see what came next. Some might call it anxious, but I call it curious, future leaning, impatient, a little impatient. I was always touching things, asking what they meant, but not only what is this, but what is this for? Also, I remember that I was very absorbed by stories. My mom is an amazing storyteller. As a mother of 6, she really used that tool. And now as a grandmother, she really uses that tool. But they weren't just entertainment for me. It was how I access to reality. And now I really use that. So storytelling came very, very early to my life. And also I remember, and I think that's a common point, that I naturally gravitated towards adults. I was the first grandchild, the first niece within a huge family. So I was really constantly pulled into the adult world. I remember being the only kid in the groups of adults, even when I had my sister and my brothers that came quickly into my life. While they were outside playing, I was joining the adult conversation. I stayed at the table, listening to what was happening. Also, I think I carry a lot of responsibility. The fact to, being the eldest, wanted to be a good kid. That was very central to who I was, and I think to who I am.
You know what? I was going to ask you that, how did it shape the fact that, I know that you come from a big family, but I wasn't expecting that answer. I was expecting how it shaped you, and you went completely the opposite of what I had in mind. I love that.
Growing up in a big family, I think shaped my whole life in ways that I am still discovering, because for years I thought that all families were like mine, and life has very painfully taught me that I was really fortunate and that not all families were like mine. Actually, it taught me that most of families are not like mine, and that I was very, very, very lucky. First thing, I was born into a matriarchy. My grandma Horacia was a true matriarch, and the kind of a woman who hold the family together emotionally and practically. She made asado, she made these raviolis, they knit all our sweaters, painted the house. You could find her moving bricks from one place to the other, my granny. And she had a lot of energy. And in that sense, she shaped me. I'm a person that cannot stop doing. I really have a lot of hard time resting and finding how to unplug. I'm also, my standards, my work ethic, my instinct to take care of people, that I have from my mom, from my granny, from all the women in my family that are very strong. Also, I think my storytelling comes from that. We have been friends for 70 years, I think, something like that, a lot of years. But you don't know that I was the kid that knew all the Bible stories, and I was asked in mass to reply. There was a children mass, and the priest would say, "Anyone but Anita, please answer me this question." I was not allowed. I was the know-it-all, the Hermione type. You know me, and I think I carry on that from that early childhood, and the love stories, and the passion to know them, to grab them, to use them. Now that as a teacher, so that's something that it goes. That's back old. That back old.
You know what it was interesting is that, first of all, I think that the example of math that you just gave me, I didn't know it, but I'm not surprised at all. The variety of topics that you know about, the things that you do, never ends to mesmerize me. What I think that also it's interesting is that how you quote your grandmother, and how, when I was thinking about how I could introduce you to this episode for listeners that do not know you, I wrote down I would need a full 30-minute episode to introduce who you are, what you do, the variety of things. And you describing your grandmother doing all of those things, there's definitely
Range.
traceability. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm a person with range, and I think that one thing that my family taught me in the early childhood is that you can be a lot of things. You don't have to pick, and I don't pick a lot.
That is a great, great, great advice. I think that academically, you were also very influenced by your family. And I want to talk about take you now to that first role, basically. You started in marketing like before, let's say, the online era. Tell us a bit about that first role. What was it?
Well, this is very interesting because I don't know, I think you know that, but the listeners don't. So I began studying business administration. I never studied marketing. And for most of my university, I was convinced that I would go into finance. I was really sure. I loved it. I loved the technical part of it. And now people say, and you moved to the other side, but marketing has a lot of numbers. But that's another story. My first role was at BNP, Banque Nationale de Paris, as a finance girl for a very short period of time, like 5 months. And I remember one day looking around, I was working at the money table with a lot of responsibility, although it was my first job. But I looked around and I realized it was 3 p.m. and I was the only woman that wasn't there cleaning the toilets. At that moment, something came to me and looked up and said, I don't belong here. I cannot be here. It was the late 90s, right? It was the last year before the 2000 where I had my first role in marketing at Natura. But actually, it wasn't. My first role was in a place where I didn't belong. And that's something that you learn. And sometimes I advise some of my students or the people I mentor, you don't have to stay in places where you don't belong. It's not a battle that you need to pick. You can pick it if you want, but you also can, shift and see if there's anything else that is more tailor-made for you, where you can really thrive. And I imagine if I stayed there in that environment, of course, I wouldn't be me, but also it would have been really, really difficult.
Where was the space for this storyteller? Where was the storyteller in you coming out during that time? Because I imagine that storyteller in that money table surrounded by men, it was
That
definitely
were
not there.
walking inside of the office at 3 p.m. If something, if the market closed it right, there was an uplifting whiskey everywhere, and if it was a crash, everybody was talking about suicide. So stories are everywhere, and they shape reality. And look, I have a story of the decision I made when I chose Natura. The first day of March in the 2000, I got two phone calls, and I was one for Natura and one for Arcor. Arcor is a very prominent company in Argentina and well known, and all my teammates, my colleagues at university wanted to go inside of Arcor. And Natura was a company that was not present in Argentina, and no one knew Natura. But the same day I got the two calls. You have entered this trainee program and this young professionals program. See, it was equivalent, the money, everything was the same. And a same person who had, chosen Arcor. I know that. But good opportunity included Brazil, a year in Brazil. And I wanted the experience. I wanted the culture. I wanted the new language. I wanted the carnival. I wanted the whole thing. And back then, for me, I think success meant that too. New experiences, new relationships, and the relationships are the thing I value the most in my life. And I have another story I didn't tell you about the 8-year-old Anita that went at the beach from Carpa, how do you say Carpa? From 10 to 10 at the beach, asking everybody who there was and introducing. Hi, I'm Anita. I belong to the 10 next door. I want to know you. Hello, how are you? If you see that, Anita never left me because I choose Natura, I choose another country, I choose meeting people.
I think that also you chose that variety, which is,
Yes,
you can
yes.
trace almost your grandmother or Horacian, like that hair variety and your mom's storytelling, and also that source of inspiration for that storytelling, which probably you had a lot more stories to tell with an year in Brazil, in a different culture, in a different language, and at a safe bet as Arcor, who I'm sure that it would have also been amazing, but
I never find out. I never found out that. But you're right. The look for range and look for novelty have been. I haven't thought about this. You're making me realize that it's true, that you're making me reflect that that's a search for me, novelty and range, and had been professionally and as a consumer, as as this person that refuses to, and now as a consultant, because what I love about consulting is the
the
ability to
variety.
yes, with a pyme and with a very small business, a startup or a big company, and that range is very attractive to me.
I absolutely love that. You know what? The other thing about going tent to tent, and you made me think, when I was little, my parents used to say that when they would refuse to buy me ice cream, I would go to another tent, find someone that was eating ice cream. Yes, exactly. And go, my parents never bought me an ice cream. And people will
Well,
feel
that's
bad and
fantastic.
guilty. I don't know. I think that I prefer your example, but it goes back to marketing and convincing and persuading,
And
basically.
yeah, and making your point, actually. And I can picture you going from then to 10 ask you for ice cream. That's fantastic. And you always have been getting what you want since you were 8. Fantastic.
So take us back. So you joined Natura, we're talking about 2000s. The world doesn't stop, from that 1999 to that catastrophe. The world keeps on spinning in the right direction. What was that transition like, going from, marketing and in a pre-dot-com era to that online era? And I think that with what we're going through now with AI, with this, which is another transition, what are the parallels and similarities that you can see with the transition that we're going right now?
I saw those transitions are the one that we're living now and the one that you were very little, but I went through all of that once. And it's true, during my first year at marketing at Natura and Zatabon, I was, learning to manage portfolios, pricing, promotion, but it was the traditional marketing there. It was a great training, but those companies were not digitally first. And that's my first realization. In 2008, I could see where everything was going, and I knew that if I stayed at Avon, which I was back then, I wouldn't truly understand the new world. So I made a hard decision. I took a pay cut of 30% at least, and I moved into a much smaller company in Argentina that had been bought by Staples, but it was OfficeNet and a startup, but cutting edge company in e-commerce back then, and cutting edge in social media too. The early blog social media that was, back then very, very intriguing to me, and I saw it as novelty. So when you move, you not always move up, towards companies that are bigger or job titles that are more important. In that case, I moved towards the new. And that was one of the best career decisions of my life. First, because I met Sebas, my husband, and also my teacher in this digital world, because Sebas had been working in digital since the 2000s. So my husband, later my co-founder, my teacher, but also the company at that time was pioneering social media, and I became a blogger with a fake identity. But I became one of the 10 most read blogs in Argentina at that
A
time.
content creator, like what
A
we would call.
yeah, a content creator, but a blogger. But then a really great experience experimenting a creator back then. What the life of a creator was a lot of writing and not a lot of videos. But after 2 years there, with my new e-commerce experience, with my new blogging as a blogger experience, what I learned from Sebas about social media and the new codes of, Click Manifesto, ideas that were really new back then, I was already thinking digitally first, and I could move into roles that were pioneering. So when you grow, sometimes you grow in ways that are not very obvious, right? And I think that's the moment right now to make moves like that move that I made. You don't understand the revolution from the outside.
I think that the challenge that we had, that maybe younger generations, you probably know this best than I do, but I think that the challenge that we had is that, we come from, we were educated by parents that always the career ladder was moving upwards to a better title, to a better position, to more people under you. And then you talk about this paradigm that you were in, that is like, I needed to take a step back. I needed to learn. And you kind of take a step back, you take a pay cut, in that meaning that you learn new skills and that you almost set yourself up for success for what's to come. And I think that the younger generation nowadays probably cares less about the titles and that idea, which for us, I think that it was a lot harder.
Yeah, especially for Generation X. I think your generation is wiser than ours. Ours is job title. That's the first thing. And the only measure of achievement is job title. Something that I didn't mention in the episode, but it's very interesting, is I was a single mom. Before meeting my husband, I was a single mom. And taking that pay cut was my MBA. After that, I studied in an MBA, but I couldn't go to study to make a digital marketing internship or course or program, or I couldn't do something formal. So the only way I had is by saying, okay, the 8 hours I'm spending working, I need to be working in something that teaches me. And all my career moves were because we're motivated by the understanding that I am not learning anything new, and my next year is going to look very much like this year. It's amazing that you capture the need for novelty, because now I'm thinking, and
I was thinking the same.
motivation. And that's has been my motivation all my life. And I think I can pay you as my therapist then, because I made a lot of discovery during this conversation.
I love that. But yeah, I agree. I think that for those who know you, it definitely makes sense. But this is the whole idea of the podcast, things that, only able to make sense when you had a chance to look back. If you would have to choose, let's say, 2 pivotal moments, so you carry on in a great trajectory of now digital marketing and still private sector, still working for others, before the now, where you had your own company for more than 10 years. But if you would have to choose 2 pivotal moments, what would those be in your career?
The first one is easy, is the one that I said before, the saying no to finance, say yes to marketing, and specifically, I would say saying yes to Natura, because starting in marketing in a company that was forward thinking in the sense of philosophy, purpose, they were talking about purpose in the 2000s. That's something that came to me very early. Values, reasons to believe, like very understanding brands that were not bullshit. They were very well constructed. And I learned that. And I can spot bullshit from that experience everywhere. So one of my, superpowers is seeing brand arguments and seeing claims that are not sustained. And all my structure comes from that Natura experience. So I think it was a great decision because it was a company grounded in values, and it gave me a really good foundation. But also, the second good pivotal moment was when I was at Aleph, at IMS, and I turned 40, and I thought, my year as a marketing director there is going to be, my next year is going to be exactly the same as this one. It will be. So I jumped into, Proteina, into my husband is entrepreneur, and I am the first employee. Let's say I was a co-founder since the beginning, but I didn't work at the company the first year. And the second year I jumped, and I saw very quickly that this kind of projects and clients gave me the chance of working with amazing people, gave me that variety that we're talking about, and the capacity of being impactful and having a career also that is in my own terms, where success is defined by me, where I have the rare gift of, and I don't recommend it, but the gift of working with a husband is not for everybody, but it is for me, and for my life is joy, right? Is and I could be present for the adolescence of my son, which I feared a lot because he's the child of a single mother. So at first I was scared about how he was going to turn up and if he was going to have a tough adolescent, and he didn't actually.
I could have been your therapist and I have told you that things would be all right with you being his mother, but I actually find it very interesting. So basically what you're saying is that you were not kind of being justice, you're not making justice to that 8-year-old, and you decided to take a leap and be like, okay, I'm gonna go with who I trust very much. I'm sure that it's not easy to be an entrepreneur with your own husband, but you jump into making justice to that 8-year-old and finding diversity again and fun.
Yes, and also I went to a place where I could be aligned with my core values, which I didn't have in my previous experience. So, what I learned in Natura is that when you do things aligned with your values, things are better, even more successful sometimes. So in that sense, yes, I was making justice to my 8-year-old, but also to my 22-year-old that was enamored with great values, and it was a reclaiming of the life that I deserve, I think.
I absolutely love that. And then you not only have a company with your husband, but you also teach marketeers, basically. If you haven't discovered by now, you have a podcast, you have lots of clients, you constantly write in, you're a mother, not a single mother anymore, but like a mother as well. And you are also teaching marketeers. How does that experience shape you in you becoming a professional and continue evolving?
Well, I think teaching is awesome, but teaching marketing is more exciting than teaching anything else because it makes you humble. When you teach, you are not only shaping skills, you are shaping criteria. So you are helping people build judgment, how to decide, how to prioritize. More of us that we teach strategy and we teach marketing in a high level, not in the tool level. And it gave me a front row seat to the next generation. They're questioning questionings, the anxieties, the things they don't tolerate, which is a constant reminder of how the profession is evolving. And also they teach us, right, to be less conforming. My generation is very, very conforming in the career path, and being in touch with next generation is awesome in that sense. But also it forces you to not be only reliant on your instincts and to go back to the logics, the processes, the precision, the conceptual differences that make something more robust. So I think being a teacher makes you study, makes you be on top of your game. It's much easier to call bullshit of you. And today with ChatGPT, you cannot be wrong because they are actually asking Claude. They are asking Claude at the same time that you're teaching. And if you say something that is not like that or like can be challenged, it will come up in the classroom. But it's a great tool for marketers or for anyone that wants to be in the know or in the latest things and not grow old.
Yeah, like you're like, well, I know what I know, and the profession actually moves so fast. Every single profession moves so fast that you probably learn something new in every single class. And that dynamic of I'm the teacher and I'm here to teach you, it's an exchange. And I think that that's wonderful. I have a question though. What is the one thing that you found most surprising about the things that they don't want to keep from all marketeers?
They don't want a career. They don't mind. They want the alignment with values more than the career. They want the alignment with lifestyle more than the career. So a company that provides something cool, interesting to work on will be having an advantage towards other brands that only pay a lot of money. So it's the money, of course, but as they are more sure of their value and they have better self-esteem, I think, that our generation, they are not ready to tolerate abuse or even working towards something that it doesn't provide joy or it's not interesting to them. So that's a great reminder for everybody.
Yeah, it took us a long time to understand that you spend 8-9 hours, you cannot only stay for the title. And I think that for us, it was a matter of many, many years of actually being on those jobs to get to that conclusion, maybe. With everything moving faster, they also probably got to that conclusion faster.
Yes, and they are ready to start over once and again and again. And that's fantastic. That's fantastic because always that helps you being plastic. They won't be staying if it's not interesting for them.
Wow, that is very interesting. Now, Anita, I have two last questions for you. One would be that I like to make everyone that passes through this podcast is if you would be able to give one piece of advice to that 22-year-old Anita, or to even someone that is starting you here today in, maybe studied business, but is also a storyteller, but thinks that marketing could be a career. With everything that you know now, what advice would you give that, Anita?
I would say stay where you are learning and go find places and environments that are aligned with what you define as success and as you define as value. Because if not, you're losing time and you're probably not getting a good value for the hours you're putting there, because it will cost you health, it will cost you stress. And you don't deserve that. You deserve to work in things where you can add value, but that also give you fuel for your life. As you said, it's like 8 hours. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's probably more than I've spent with my husband every day. So as much as I have done a good choice with my partner, but definitely you should do the same. I love that. And one last question that I actually didn't brief anyone on this, but if you would be able to Imagine that this is a voice message that you're sending to Anita 20 years from now. What would you hope to tell her in that message?
Stay curious. That's a superpower.
Nice. Well, I have no doubt that in the same way that that anxious kid that was ready to face this world 2 months before, and, very in line with that maternal part of the family, and definitely I think paternal, even if we didn't speak about your dad, it's very much in line.
It is. I'm a teacher like him. So, yeah,
Exactly,
very, very.
exactly. I have no doubt that you will stay curious. And now that you know, you will continue to do something that is very much in line with who you are as a marketeer and as a person. I just have to say thank you for being here. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks.